In 2020, Brazil's central bank launched a payment system called Pix. It's free. Money moves in seconds, day or night. About 170 million Brazilians use it, roughly 80% of the country. 6 years later, the United States put a 25% tariff on Brazilian sugar, steel, machinery, and clothing. And when the US trade representative published its reasons, one of them was Pix. Sit with that for a second. A country just got hit with tariffs, in part over a payment app that its own citizens love. That has never happened before. Not once. No government has ever treated another country's payment system as a trade barrier and taxed its exports over it. So here's the question this video answers. How does a free app that Brazilians adore end up triggering a trade fight? And is the American argument actually as ridiculous as it sounds? Because I'll tell you now, it's more complicated than either side wants it to be. There's a real argument underneath this. There's a much weaker one sitting on top of it. And the reason it's happening right now has almost nothing to do with Brazil. Here's what we're going to do. I'll explain what Pix actually is, because most coverage gets this wrong. Then I'll give you the 3 specific complaints the US filed, stated as strongly as Washington states them. Then Brazil's answer to each one. Then the thing underneath all of it, which is the part almost nobody is reporting. First, what Pix actually is. Most coverage calls Pix an app. It isn't. Pix is infrastructure. It's a set of rails built and operated by the Banco Central do Brasil, Brazil's central bank, that any bank or fintech plugs into. You use it inside your own bank's app. There's no Pix app to download. Think of it less like Venmo and more like a road. The government built the road. Private companies drive on it. It launched in November 2020. By its 3rd year, it had overtaken card transactions in Brazil. Today, it handles more than half of all transactions in the country by volume, more than credit and debit cards combined. It's free for individuals, and it costs businesses a fraction of what card acceptance costs. And that's the whole fight in one sentence. Pix didn't beat Visa and MasterCard in the market. It changed what the market was. The American case. 3 complaints. Now, the US position, and I want to state this properly, because the version going around is a straw man. The US trade representative is not arguing that Brazil should delete Pix. A senior administration official told Reuters directly that getting rid of Pix isn't the ask. The complaint is narrower, and it comes in 3 parts. Complaint 1. The referee owns a team. Brazil's central bank both regulates the payments market and owns and operates Pix. USTR calls that a structural conflict of interest, absent adequate safeguards, and says the bank has used its regulatory power to favor what the filing calls Brazil's national champion. Strip away the politics, and that's a genuine regulatory question. If the body writing the rules also runs a product competing under those rules, who checks the rules are fair? Complaint 2. Banks are forced to offer it free. The central bank requires participating institutions to offer Pix to individuals at no charge. A private bank cannot decide to price it. Complaint 3. Capped fees and mandatory shelf space. The central bank caps what institutions can charge businesses for Pix and requires Pix to be displayed prominently on the main screen of banking apps. USTR's filing puts it bluntly. American providers are being made to promote their Brazilian competitor. That's the case. Not Brazil built something good and we're upset. It's a state actor is writing rules that guarantee its own product wins, and foreign firms have to carry it. Whatever you think of the tariffs, complaints 2 and 3 are factual descriptions of what the rules say. This isn't invented. And here's a detail that tells you how firmly Washington had made up its mind. USTR ran the full process, 2 public hearings, more than 360 written comments, 77 witnesses. A number of those comments came in defending Pix, describing how well it works and pointing out it operates lawfully under Brazilian law. USTR's published response was essentially, "That's nice, and it's beside the point." Satisfaction with the service doesn't cancel a conflict of interest, which is, and I want to be fair here, a legally coherent answer. Consumers like it is not a defense to a structural competition complaint. It's also an answer that guaranteed no amount of public support for Pix was ever going to change the outcome. Brazil's answer. Brazil's response is that all three complaints assume something that isn't true, that Pix is a company competing for market share. Brazil says it's a public service. Gabriel Galípolo, who runs Brazil's central bank, gave the sharpest version of this. Complaining that Pix hurt card revenue, he said, is kind of like saying that creating basic sanitation hurt the revenues of those who own water trucks. And he made a factual point that's harder to dismiss than the joke. Credit card use in Brazil went up in absolute terms after Pix launched, because Pix pushed millions of people to open their first bank account. The card companies got a bigger market. They just stopped owning all of it. President Lula called the tariffs unjustified and said Pix is a heritage of the Brazilian people. The government's formal position is that Section 301 is a unilateral instrument, that the World Trade Organization is the proper venue, and it pointed at a number that complicates the whole framing. By American data, the U.S. ran a $14.4 billion goods surplus with Brazil last year. Section 301 is normally aimed at countries running surpluses against the United States. Brazil isn't one. Economists have pushed back too. The Peterson Institute for International Economics argued that calling a government-run payment system a trade barrier is unfounded, and that the action threatens Brazil's financial autonomy. It was never only about Pix. Here's something the coverage flattened, and it matters. Pix is one of 6 issue areas. The others, digital trade, specifically Brazilian court orders directing X, Meta, and Google to remove political content and suspend accounts belonging to U.S. residents. Preferential tariffs, Brazil grants Mexico and India, but not the U.S. Anti-corruption enforcement, intellectual property, ethanol market access, and illegal deforestation. Read Ambassador Greer's own statement announcing the tariffs, and Pix isn't even in it. He led with censorship of American tech companies, anti-corruption, and illegally logged land. So America attacked Pix is the headline. Pix was one line item in a 6-part case is the fact. Both matter, but if you only know the headline, you don't understand the fight. Now the part almost nobody is reporting. Here's where it gets interesting. In February 2026, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the emergency law the administration had been using to impose tariffs didn't actually authorize tariffs. The legal foundation for the entire tariff program collapsed. A temporary 10% stopgap went up under a different statute, and it was set to expire on July 24, 2026. So the administration needed new legal ground. It chose Section 301, but Section 301 has a requirement the emergency law didn't. You cannot use it to tariff a country for having a trade surplus or for annoying you. You have to identify specific foreign practices and argue they are unreasonable and burden American commerce. You have to name things. Now look at the timing. The Brazil investigation opened July 15, 2025. Days after a presidential letter to Lula threatening 50% tariffs over the prosecution of former President Jair Bolsonaro. The final action landed July 15, 2026, the statutory deadline. And on July 24th, the day the stopgap expired, a second Section 301 action hit 60 countries, including Brazil, over forced labor enforcement. Another 12.5%. Brazil's total exposure is now up to 37.5%. So did the US suddenly discover a problem with Pix? Or did it need a list of nameable practices, and Pix was on the list? I'm not going to answer that for you, but I'll point out that trade groups representing Visa, MasterCard, and other US tech firms had been lobbying USTR on Brazil's payment rules for years before any of this. The complaint is old, The tariff is new. What changed wasn't Brazil. Where both sides are weakest. Fair is fair. So here's the honest counterweight in both directions. Brazil's weak spot. It's a public service, not a competitor, is a convenient answer when your public service has taken half the transaction volume in the country. A regulator that mandates its own product's placement in private apps is doing something. And calling it sanitation doesn't make the conflict of interest disappear. Washington's weak spot. The remedy doesn't match the complaint. If the problem is payments regulation, tariffs on sugar and steel don't fix it. They punish exporters who have nothing to do with it. And the scale claims have been inflated in the coverage. Brazil's own government puts the affected trade at about $7.4 billion, roughly 18% of what it shipped to the US in 2024. Industry estimates run higher, near $9.5 billion. Coffee, beef, aircraft parts, and petroleum were exempted. And notably, Brazil hasn't hit back yet. It's preparing a WTO case and has activated the machinery of its reciprocity law. But as of now, no counter tariffs. Its vice president and its own industry lobby are pushing for talks instead. Let's zoom out. This is why it matters far beyond Brazil. For 20 years, the argument for national payment rails was efficiency. Cheaper, faster, more people banked. Nobody priced in the possibility that building one might carry a trade cost. Now every country running the same playbook is watching. India's UPI, Europe's Wero, and the digital euro. Every central bank that looked at Pix and thought we should build that. And the message they just received is not, don't build it. It's something more precise and more uncomfortable. Build it, and the rules you write around it become negotiable with Washington. That's the real shift. Payment systems used to be plumbing. Boring, domestic, nobody's business but yours. They are now strategic infrastructure, in the same category as energy grids and undersea cables. And strategic infrastructure gets negotiated over. This was never really a fight about an app. It's the first fight over who gets to own the pipes that money moves through. And it will not be the last one. So here's the question. In your country, who owns the rails your money travels on? And if your government built a free alternative tomorrow, who exactly would lose? Tell me in the comments, because whoever that is, they have lawyers.